All right, Mr. Ritter. Are you ready for it? So, first question in our first guest game is pretty simple. How did you get into professional wrestling?
Um, so when I want to say like 4 or 5, I
Mm-hmm.
had friends who lived down the street, and they would rent VHS of all the old WWF pay-per-views. And when I'm at their house, I'd be watching them with them. And I saw things like The Undertaker versus Mankind in the Boiler Room Brawl, stuff like that. And it blew my mind what I was watching. We used to wrestle on a mattress in their bedroom because their parents were never around. One of them was older than us, like by a few years. So he was watching us, even though he probably wasn't old enough to be watching us. And I don't think my parents knew that his parents weren't home. But yeah, no, like we'd throw mattresses down, we'd wrestle on there. Also, weird thing. I do remember being very young,
Okay.
younger than that, and watching wrestling. And my mom coming in one day and not wanting to watch wrestling. So she looked at me and she goes, "Oh, who are the hot guys in their underwear?" And I immediately shut the show off. And like, I don't think I watched it again until there were guys, my grandparents owned a bar. So there were guys that came in that my parents told me were Bam Bam Bigelow and Hulk Hogan. And I have pictures of me with them. And they're just some random guys that would come into the bar that were regulars. And I thought I had met Hulk Hogan like for a lot of my life. I'm kind of glad that I hadn't now, but like back then it was different.
Could you imagine if you did?
In the early 90s? Or yeah. So Bam Bam Bigelow's name was Carl.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that's how I got into wrestling. Was like when I really got into it was watching all like the 1996 pay-per-views through the WWF, the in your houses and stuff like that on VHS with my friends, and I stuck with it for a very, very long time. I fell out right around the rise of Punk for a little bit, and then got back into it again.
You and me both.
You know, college, or I didn't go to college, but the college years, and I had other interests like vagina. So
that stopped me from watching wrestling for a very long time as too. Like high school and college, like women, what's going on? so yeah, women and alcohol. I don't regret it. I also don't remember most of it, and so that's also a thing. That is also a thing. All right, next question in the first guest game: Who is your current favorite? Who's your current favorite wrestler, and who is your favorite wrestler of all time?
Favorite wrestler of all time is easy. That's The Undertaker. Has been forever. I would have said Bray Wyatt. Unfortunately, Bray passed.
Yeah.
So right now, actually wrestling, I honestly don't think I have a favorite like right now. Like
wow.
There are people that I really like, but I don't think there's anyone that I am head over heels for. I've been a lot more into women's wrestling recently than I really have the men as well. So
Good
like
time to be a women's wrestling fan.
I love seeing what NXT is doing with Roxanne and Gigi Dolan and Lyra Valkyria and all of that. I'm a big fan of Abaddon, and she does not get used enough, and it disappoints me. But I've always been into those darker characters like Malachi, like The Undertaker, like Bray, like Abaddon, but I honestly don't think there's anyone that's kind of at this point. So,
Very, very interesting. I think that's the first that no one that's ever been posed that question has ever said we don't have a favorite current wrestler. But I do kind of like that. It gives you some range a little bit. Next question here: What is your favorite match of all time?
My favorite match of all time, and I honestly don't know why, is Undertaker Triple H WrestleMania 17. There are so many better Undertaker matches.
That's a unique call. That is a very unique call.
I know, but WrestleMania 17 is my favorite pay-per-view of all time.
Okay.
And I was very into the American Badass Undertaker at the time. I was very into the story that he was telling with Triple H. It's the first of many WrestleManias between them.
Because they went from 17 to 27 to 28, right?
Yep. So I kind of like the history and the lore there, but when I think of WrestleMania 17 and everything that happened there, I always think Undertaker and Triple H, and it is my favorite wrestling pay-per-view of all time. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there are better matches, and I have this thing where my favorite isn't always the thing that I know is the best.
Okay.
Like with horror movies, my favorite horror movies in a franchise generally aren't what I consider to be the best movies in the franchise, but they're my favorite for various reasons. I love Halloween 6. I know it's not the best Halloween. I fucking love it. Like, it is what it is. So.
Listen, there's always one that that you got to pick, and so if Halloween 6 is your thing, Halloween 6 is your thing. I'm not a horror person myself, but that's a me problem, not a you problem at all. So I feel like I know this answer because I do control most of the social media surrounding KOTR as well as Wrestle Addict Radio. Frets helps me out a lot too as well. But how did you first hear about us?
I mean, it was through Twitter.
Yeah.
We ended up following each other. I know you guys had reached out to me. I had seen your show on Twitch. You guys had posted some streams. I was looking to do collaborations, so I was just kind of like checking out random shows here or there to see like how everyone was and who I thought would be a good fit to come on our show and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I had checked you guys out, and you guys had hit me up, and we had talked back and forth, and you guys came on, and I am a frequent when I can, because you guys are normally going when I'm at work, pop in the chat as often as I can for as long as I can and come hang out because you guys have a great show.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
But yeah, no, it was absolutely through Twitter.
Yeah, that's honestly, that's everybody's answer. That's usually, they're like, oh, it's either through Twitter or it was Ricky. Ricky hit me up. No live single. It happens. So here's a two-part question. If you were a professional wrestler, what would be your pro wrestling name? And also, what would your finisher be?
There's actually an indie wrestler who's doing the finisher. Now, I called it, so I used to backyard wrestle with Travis, who is like the head of Creation World and was my co-host for a very long time, and some of my other friends. I had a trampoline. We had a backyard wrestling federation that went through various forms, and we all had different characters, and then those characters kind of carried on into video games and stuff. But as Matt Ritter, or now the Warden Matt Ritter, I called my finisher the Mattitude Adjustment.
Okay,
and
nice.
It's a backdrop into a Uranagi. So you get them up in the backdrop and you float over into the Uranagi. And I literally just saw an indie wrestler using it as a finisher. Will Gray had posted something, and I'm like, I need to see that again because I think he just did my fucking finish.
So is it a fireman's carry? No, he has him straight on his back.
So he picks him up in like a backdrop, like
like a back body drop. Okay,
takes over into a Uranagi. The other thing,
that's
which
really
drives
unique,
me insane, because I feel like I invented it. Hangman Page's Deadeye.
Okay.
I called it the reverse tombstone. I was doing it when I was fucking 12 years old. I had a rip-off character that I created called Havoc. He was basically just the Undertaker, and I wanted to do a tombstone, but I didn't want to do it. So I put a guy on my back and tombstoned him. And then Hangman Page showed up, and I'm like, motherfuckers.
I have a wild story like that has haunted me ever since. And this is a sideberg real quick, but it's haunted me ever since. So in college, I was taking a BS computer business course or something. And so as part of that thing, we had to do like this seminal final assignment. It was a group project, like all great college courses are. And the group project was come up with a business and create a business proposal based on the tools that most of us already fucking knew how to use. So what ended up happening was me and the two other Joe Schmoes next to me who were more like we were intellectually more advanced than this class, and so we were like, yeah, let's just work together and just pull something out of our ass. And so the premise of our business was, what's the laziest thing we can put together in a very short amount of time and still make it look good? And tell me where you've heard this before. This is also back in 2008-ish. 2008, 2009, we came up with a business called Lazy Shiz. So we thought we might get in trouble for saying shit in college, so we called it Lazy Shiz. And I fucking hate that I'm saying this, but It was a a door-to-door food delivery service. The premise was the premise was you were too lazy to get off your ass and get your own food, so we would get it for you. We got tied for best business. Never saw those two guys again. Never thought about it, and then years later, I was like, "That's fucking Uber Eats."
Did you look to see if any of those guys are in any way, shape, or form tied to either Uber Eats, DoorDash, any of that? Like, did they just take that idea and actually do something with it?
I don't know. Because we all went to Towson University, so I'd have to like look up her boss and be like, so and so is a Towson alum. I'm like, that's the one. That's the one. I'm suing for rights.
Mm-hmm.
That is haunting me to this day. I'm like, I could be successful. Like,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm 5'8" and I'm nowhere near as athletic as Hangman Page, but I could do what I call, and he came up with a far better name for it than the fucking Fabulous Tombstone, which also pisses me off. But like, it was. I'm 36 now. So that was 14 years ago. So like. Yeah, see, I feel like I invented it, and somehow Adam Page just found out about it. I feel like that's what happened.
Yeah, somebody was watching. Was like, "Oh, that was probably a great freaking idea," and went with it. That's my theory. That someone in that class, whoever be the people I did it with or whatever, just said that's a great idea, ran with it, and just maybe even changed their name, and just made it fucking rich. Fucking like we had the idea. Oh my god, yeah, it's bad. Anywho, all right. So, final question of the first guess game, and this is a question you have to answer as intuitive as possible. If you've seen the show or listened to the show, you might know what this question is. But are you Team Slack or are you Team Fuck You Slack?
I'm Team Slack.
Wow, I did not see that coming at all. Is there any reason why you are Team Slack?
No, not really.
Okay, fair enough.
Nothing against Slack.
I'm kind of sorry. I feel like you know who Slack is in our Twitter world.
Nothing against Slack.
When we get up, I have to definitely show you when that bombardment of Slackting started. It is a great clip in the archives of KOTR. He was our first fan reaction video, and we decided to annihilate him.
Listen, we have a guy who comes to all of our live streams. He's in your Discord, Taekwon.
Oh, freaking Taekwon.
And Taekwon sexually harasses me every show.
He does the same thing to Will. It's actually kind of funny.
Says all sorts of dirty things to me about how he wants me to do dirty things to him and all of this stuff. So, like, I don't know. I kind of enjoy having people around that watch the show that participate, and sometimes you can absolutely destroy them.
Yeah,
nothing against Slack.
Shout out to Daquan, great kid, very intelligent kid. He goes to Florida Atlantic, I believe. Yeah, he's going to get into animation. I feel like he's going to be freaking awesome in a couple of years. He's very, 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 very talented kid. But that concludes our first guest game. So thank you, Matt Ritter, for participating in your maiden voyage on KOTR.